Hello and welcome to the shed. Today's video is part 3 in this cabinet door build. In today's video we're going to be doing a dry fit, the glue up, detailing work, final finishing on all the timber, and then obviously putting our finish onto it, and that's where this video ends. Do take note that I am planning to do a video for hanging this cabinet door onto the cabinet that's up behind me there. And so if you'd like to see that, do leave it in the comments below, because I think it'd be a great video. Now, the real test is, does the panel actually fit? Do I need to narrow it? So that's a bit tight. That's going to be a hard push to push that down in here. It's jamming ever so slightly. So the reason this is a little bit tight to fit, and I could make it fit, but I don't want to risk damaging the grooves. What's happened is there must be a little bit of indiscrepancy in the thickness, because this is jamming on the thickness, not the depth of the groove. The sizes are correct, we sized it all correctly. So what I'm going to do is just take my stick here, it's got some 240 grit on it, and just sand just the top very edge of it, close to the edge as I can. Not going any further than I need to on both the front and the back on both sides. So after a lot of back and forwards, I finally got the top rail together. My sizing was a little bit out on the plywood because of indiscrepancies in probably the exact alignment of where my boards were. Maybe they'd moved slightly when I measured the distance, but at least if they're too large, you can make them smaller to make them fit. So that's now done, so I've got to go ahead and fit the bottom panel, so I'll get back to you once I've got that one done. So off camera, I had to make one adjustment to that central stretcher. I had to deepen those rebates that were put in there by about 1 millimeter just for it to fit properly. You might have noticed when I was fitting the panels on camera there that I was struggling to get it to come together, and I thought I had them in the correct alignment, but it turned out I hadn't, so I just made that quick adjustment. Now, before we go ahead and glue this together, there's one more thing that I want to do, and it's a little bit of detailing work, and so I'm going to bring it in here and show you exactly why I have to do it before we glue up. The main reason is, since I've got these stretchers sitting proud, and I'm going to chamfer these so it's going to add a shadow, but I want to do a full rollover to this piece here. Because when we're up here, it's going to be sitting maybe 25mm higher than the top of the cabinet, and the idea is that's the grab point for opening the door, and so we're going to do a full rollover on the top of this piece. And I don't want it to interfere with this raised part of the miter here, so I don't want the rollover coming into this side stretcher, it's just going to stay on this top stretcher. And because this is proud, I can't do it after it's glued up, and so it needs to be done on that piece prior to gluing it up. So what I need to do is take a measurement off the cabinet here, put the measurement onto the door, and then that'll tell me where I'm going to finish that rollover all the way around. And this gives me 810 millimeters. Then we're going to come down on here, and I can see that this is 826, so I'm only going to have a small rollover, about 15 millimeters here. So I'm going to grab my pencil and just put a mark at 810, and then I'm going to come over and do the same over here and back on this side. Now I have also made sure that this is my top stretcher. I'm not doing this on the bottom stretcher, it's my top stretcher, it's my one that's labelled number 1 with the top here, and so I know that I've actually got the correct one, and I've got my labelling 2 and 3 on the other ones over here, so I know that I've got it right. So the very first thing I'm going to do here is transfer that line that I've just marked on here, just using a basic pencil gauge, just so I've got an eyeball spot on this side to move to. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate, it is on the back, so it's not going to be seen as much as this front edge. The front one is where it really counts, and so that rollover is going to come right into this corner here. So we're going to put it into the vise. I'm going to leave it up fairly high. This is the presented side, so I don't want to go too deep into these miters here, so we're going to roll it removing as little material as possible, so I'm not going to start with a roughing plane. I'm going to use just my number 4, so I'm going to come at 45. I might not be able to see it, but I'm subtly moving onto the top here. So now I'm going to come down further here. So I'm slowly starting to get that roll happening. So now I'm going to come on the back. Do the same thing. Hard arrows just here. I need to get rid of that. So I'm actually just going to come over the top of the whole thing, just doing very light passes. And once you're happy with that shaping, like I showed in the previous video, you can then bring in a card scraper if you want to further smooth that out, and then bring in some sandpaper, or you can just go straight to some sandpaper. In this case, I'm going to use 240 grit sandpaper, but I'm just going to double check it once again that I've got the correct shaping that I want. I can check on the side for the shaping on both sides to see that it's even. Now, taut it out, push it down so it hits the shape. And I've got a lot of pressure down to keep that where I want it. So now that I've put the sandpaper on, I can see I've still got a little bit of a flat area here. So I'm going to go back to the hand plane. Just try and take that little flat part out if I can. It's not bad. It is by hand. I haven't used a set molding plane, and if you were going to do this and you actually had a set hollow plane or a round, I think it's the hollow that you put on here, you could run that over the top and that would actually make it nice and even, and you wouldn't have to use just a straight hand plane. But I wanted to show you how you can do it without a specialist plane. So you can see in here how that shaping goes. So let's put it back in the door and then we can look at starting to glue this together. So since this is quite a complicated glue up and we've got these 6 different corners, without taking this apart, what I want to do is put this middle stretcher in first, and so I'll take one out at a time and glue it together, and that means I don't lose the shape that I've already got held together. Just using some PVA or whatever glue you want to use. This side in first, and then I've got to bring this together using a clamp because it's tight. And a little bit further in. This one fitted in much better than that far side, but that's a nice tight fit. This one's a little bit loose because the angles are a little bit off. So I left this, it's probably been about 12 hours. I wanted to make sure this glue was really dry, considering the glue is the only thing holding it together. So the next step here is to clean up any of the joinery, where there's any indiscrepancies, especially on the middle stretcher here. We want to make sure that sits absolutely level. Then a general clean up of the surface, and then trying to cover up any gaps, and there are definitely a few gaps here. And then we'll go into a little bit more detailing work, final sanding, finishing, and then it'd be time to hang it. So I don't think we're going to hang it today. I think I'll do a separate video on that, on how to actually hang it with just normal butt hinges or something like that. So do leave it down below if you'd like to see that video, because I think it'd be a good video to do. So let's jump down in here, start cleaning it up, and get into our detailing. Fairly flush there already, so that's actually no problem. This edge is slightly lifted here, so what I'm going to do is just hand plane that until it sits flush with this and hopefully not catching the jarrah piece. And I'm just doing that little lift-off method that you've seen me do before. I happen to be going a little bit against the grain here, so I'll have to clean that up afterwards. So that's sitting fairly flush now, so what I want to do is just go with that grain just to clean up those little bits of tear out that are here. Can't even be felt with a finger now, there's just a little bit more. We can see here there's actually a little gap where I've sawn here, and this little bit that blew out just here when I saw through for this mitered half lap on the top here. So I think the best bet for covering up this little gap here is just a little bit of PVA glue and some sandpaper. So we're going to run it along here. Wipe the excess off the top, and then I'm going to sand with the jarrah, and I think the darker colour is going to get stuck in that glue, hopefully. Actually, it was going to go this way. It's definitely going to be noticeable on the final product, but I'm just hoping that it's not that noticeable. It's going to be better than a gap. So I've just got another little spot here where the glue's not filled it yet. But this is a slightly larger gap, so I'm just going to use the back of my marking knife just to push that glue down in there. Once the gap's fully filled, excess off the top, and back to the sandpaper as we did before. When I add a bullnose to this, this should actually disappear, because we're going to add a bullnose detail to here, so that should remove that unsightly mark and move it into this, so we will end up taking that corner off, so it shouldn't be a problem in the final product. So now we're going to move into this mitered corner, and you can see that there is a slight gap there. Now, I am going to be adding a chamfer to this, and I don't know if that's really going to hide this, so what I thought I'd do is try and do the same sandpaper trick along here, and see what the result ends up with. I'm not sure how well the sandpaper will get in there, but I'm just going to fold it like this. I know it's not the most ideal going across that grain, but it's the only way. So we're going to go ahead and do that to the other corners, because all four corners have that same issue. So now we've got that done, we're going to jump into adding the bullnose on the two upright stretchers. So over to the vise here, and I'll show you how I secure this wider panel with a workbench that doesn't have any up and down dog holes or a dead man. So since these are at different angles, I've made sure I've got this stretcher clamped right along this edge, so when I clamp it, it's all on this and not on these pieces, so we don't bend it. And what I've got here, as you can see along here, is I've got a clamp under the back here, under the bench, holding the back end of it, and the other end is over here in the vise. It's nice and secure, so now we can work it with a hand plane. So I go at a 45 for quite some time here, because That's how I remove the bulk of this curved detail. Where I've taken too much off one end, I'm just evening it out, trying to keep it all even. I'm also using the judgment where I've split it out here with that saw that I showed you before, because I want that to be completely gone. So that's part of my gauge of where I'm gonna, or how much I'm gonna remove. I don't want to have a flat spot, so I'm gonna start moving on to rolling this now. Here again, just to bring this all in flush. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's a lot of twisty grain here, so there's a lot of tear out through here. So I can try and do that with a card scraper, but considering it's going into the curve, I think I'm just going to use some 240 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to start working the flat now. If you have sandpaper on a stick like this for the flat, that's actually a really good idea. It's still not removing the tear out enough, so I'm going to move to a cabinet scraper. Just on this top edge to take the worst of that out. Now that's much smoother. It's taken a lot of that off. I'm just going to follow up with a card scraper and then sandpaper behind that. So now that's looking better. We can then come back in. Try and round this out. Now we can see there is still a little gap here, and so I am just going to put a quick little dab of glue in there and just run that sandpaper back over it. So we've just got to let that dry, so we'll turn this panel over and do the other side. Have a look at this now. It's starting to take our shape here that we wanted, shape on this side. So now what we need to do is actually just clean all these surfaces up, and I'll be using the cabinet scraper and the card scraper to do that. Maybe a little bit of sandpaper if I've got a few areas where I'm still getting a little bit of tear out. In actual fact, before I get into that, what I want to do is add the detail in here on these miters. I might just sand it. the door is officially ready to go, all surfaces smoothed, ready for a finish. Now you can use any finish you want on this. Generally I use fairly easy finishes. I use shellac, paste wax, and sometimes things like this hard wax oil that I got here. Now today I'm going to be using this hard wax oil because I want it to have that ever so light yellow sheen that this is going to give it. Just to add a little more contrast up here, I want it to be slightly yellowed, and this is a really fast, quick and easy wipe on, wipe off finish. So that's why I'm opting for that. I've been using this sample pot for a while now and I quite like the finish, and I think it's going to add a nice finish to the workshop here and finish off this cabinet nicely. So there you have it, folks. That's part 3 in the cabinet door build. As you can see, it's been quite a long process to get through the 3 parts to get to this stage, but that's what the fun of woodworking is, and all about hand tool woodworking. So I hope you've enjoyed the extra detail that I've gone into in this video, doing some joinery, stretching my own boundaries of what I've done in the past, and I hope you enjoyed it. So if you like this video, please do like and subscribe down below. While you're down there, do sound off in the comments. Did you like this build? Do you like the multi videos? Do let me know, I'm eager. Also, leave anything down below if you think there's any improvements that I can do, because I'm always striving to make better content for you all. And if you missed the first 2 parts of this video, do check them out on the screen up here. Bye for now.